Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Podcasting Mastered. I'm Chelsea, and I'm here with Wade as always. And we're back for this special holiday Christmas episode, getting into the swing of the season. And what better way to start it off with than a joyful, funny Christmas movie?
Oh, yeah.
This is a 2021 film called Single All the Way. It is a Netflix movie. And we're just gonna kind of dive in, talk about it, talk about the cast, and why you should watch this movie too.
And it's, Chelsea, she brought this up to me like forever ago about using this movie as our Christmas episode. And I had never heard of the movie before. So I went and looked at like the poster and I was like, okay, like I still don't know if this looks familiar to me, but I saw the cast and I was like, oh, wow. Okay. I know a bunch of these people. I think we'll be all right. Which is funny because actually like, the main cast, like the romantic leads, I don't know them like, at all.
Yeah.
But like everybody else. Oh, yeah. You got some really cool people, like Jennifer Coolidge. Hello.
Mm-hmm.
I'll watch anything with Jennifer Coolidge in it. I mean, that's just part of it, right?
Yes. You know you're in for something fun, for sure.
Oh,
she's involved. But, well, we could start off. Kind of a premise of the movie is essentially that this is an LGBT love story. This is a Christmas, basically a Hallmark version.
Yeah.
Which is really great to see because, honestly, there aren't that many movies like this.
You don't get a lot of like wholesome, like, I don't know, perfectly family appropriate LGBT movies. That's not something that you see a lot of.
No. And it definitely deserves a place because I know there are many LGBT movies, especially more and more recently, but a lot of them deal with, heavier topics or deal with the issues that are more serious, which is perfect to have those, but it's also good to have some on the other side that are these family-friendly, these feel-good movies, and this definitely checks all those boxes.
It sure does, yeah.
Yes, and it was also refreshing to see because since this movie came out in 2021, in 2020, I'm not going to talk too much about this movie, but Happiest Season was released, and that was the movie with Kristen Stewart in it. That was an LGBT romance movie. That movie does not have the same, like, warm, feel-good vibes, and so it was nice to have this movie. And this movie has honestly become part of our annual Christmas watching ever since we've watched it when it came out. It's just one of those movies you have to add because, I mean, the Christmas season, you always love those fun, lighthearted movies, feel good. It's just that fits the whole vibe of the season.
It's the season for that. So we don't want problems. We don't want real world issues. We want...
Okay.
Am I gonna be single on Christmas again? Or am I, It really was funny, especially like the setup. There is so much like setup in this movie that they talk about where they're like, oh, we're talking about this, but hold on, let me insert some like backstory. Like they just keep like,
yes.
like the exposition dumps is like, like, oh, I see how you snuck that in there. I wonder if that's going to come up later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and that's something interesting with this movie is that honestly, the premise of this movie is pretty cringe. Also, listeners, if you watch the trailer and then you go, why are you guys talking about this movie? Like, honestly, the trailer does not do this movie justice. So you guys should just like listen to the rest of our review and then give the movie a chance because it does have that typical premise where it starts off where we have our main character, Peter. He's busy with his job. It's very demanding around Christmas. He's basically like a social media manager, essentially working on a photo shoot for the latest product to be released. And he lives with his best friend who, okay, by the way, side note, so he's a tasker. He works for TaskRabbit. I honestly did not know TaskRabbit was real.
Is that a real thing? I never bothered to check.
Apparently it is. I think it's only on the coast or whatever because I actually saw like an advertisement for it earlier this year and I was like, oh, it's real. I thought it was just like a play on like or a joke on something, but I was like, no, they're actually
I mean, because the concept of it is totally something. He's basically like a guy for hire. Like, oh, you need this thing done? Okay, like I'll accept the job. Oh, you need this thing done? Like in this movie, he's like hired to put up Christmas lights a lot. Yes. It's like labor intensive jobs. Like, oh, like you don't want to do that yourself, I'll come do it. That's fine. I didn't know that was a real thing, but it seemed like based off of something that was real. So that's funny that is a real thing, apparently.
Yes, but I guess because of where we live in the US, we are not familiar with that. But our TaskRabbit friend, his name is Nick, and so Nick and Peter live together. They're roommates. They are only best friends. They both happen to be gay, but they are not in a relationship, even though everybody thinks that they should be. But they're like, we live our separate lives and we're friends.
And they've been best friends. Like, they've lived together for like 9 years or something.
Yes.
Something
a very
like that.
Long time.
And so like, and it's never really made clear, but the best friend, he's not like from the same area that Peter is, right?
Right.
Like they met in LA.
Because they like both moved there at the same time.
Yeah, but like the family, Peter's family, they know the best friend and they love him. They act so close, but it's like you only see each other like once or twice a year, and like Nick is not there often, but like the family also knows him really, 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 really well. So I was kind of like, okay, we'll just make some wild assumptions and move on, I guess.
Yeah, because it seemed like I guess they would come occasionally, just not during Christmas. So that's the big setup, is that Christmas time they've always spent apart because Peter always goes home for Christmas. But this year is going to be different for Peter because he has that hot new boyfriend and he is ready to show him off to his family. And he's like, my family doesn't have to bother me about having a boyfriend. And, there's so much that happens in this first, 10-15 minutes of this movie.
And I felt so bad because Peter's like, I've had, 7 or 8 boyfriends throughout this, 8-year period in LA. And all of them always end up terribly. And none of them have, ever survived, past Christmas or, through Christmas, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, we meet the new boyfriend and life is good. And then he tells the family somebody's coming with me, and they're all like, oh my God, I wonder who it is. And then Nick goes on a job to hang up Christmas lights, and he's out talking to this lady who's just yapping at him.
Yep.
Talking about some other guy who fell off a roof, and he's up on a roof oh my God, stop. And then the husband shows up, and who is the husband? Yikes, it's Peter's boyfriend. Awkward.
Yeah.
Which I just knew it was going to be something like that,
Yeah. No, it just, of course, with the setup of the movie, but Nick, being the good friend he is, does tell Peter what's up, and then Peter immediately calls everything off and just ends that relationship. But now he's supposed to go home. Yeah. Oh yes, now he has a plan.
Good lord.
Oh my gosh, which this is cringe, because then Peter's like, okay, well now since my real plan fell through, Nick, you're gonna come home with me and we're gonna pretend that we have fallen in love with each other after all these years. My family will love it. They already love you. We're set to go. I don't have to be harassed the whole time about not having a boyfriend. And Nick's like, no.
I'm not doing that. That's stupid.
No. No, we can't lie to your family. And Peter's like, it's fine. But Nick eventually goes, no, I'll go with you, but I'm not gonna be your boyfriend. I'm not gonna pretend.
Yeah.
Well, and then there's also this whole little side note too. I love this because I was like, okay, Peter, that's really being a jerk, being like, Nick, you need to pay for this plane ticket all the way to the East Coast because they live in LA. And he's like, yeah, we're flying out tomorrow, so you need to get a plane ticket. He's like, you have some money for a rainy day. And I'm like, okay, I'm sure that's a super expensive plane ticket.
For real. Right before Christmas, no big deal.
Uh-huh, exactly. But he has had all this money set aside, saving for a rainy day, that they keep alluding to, because besides Nick doing various jobs working for TaskRabbit, he also is a best-selling children's writer. He wrote this book about his dog, Emmett.
And that was another, one of those things where they, slipped in, mid-conversation when they're talking about bigger things, and I was like, okay,
yes.
Surely this won't be brought up again. And then it's continuously brought up. I'm not saying that's an issue. No. It's super cute. It's adorable. Because the book is a real life telling of when Nick adopted his dog. So it's just retold in a kiddish way. But it's best selling. People recognize it.
Yeah. No, in this movie, with the simple premise and everything, and with stuff with these characters, though, we do get a lot of character development, and we get a lot of backstories, and these things get brought up multiple times. So there is payoff for why they bring up these things, which is nice to see in a movie when they actually follow through with all these little tidbits here and there. Because another thing too that we learned before Peter goes away is that he loves plants. He wishes he could spend more time with plants, taking care of plants. He basically has a whole wall of plants.
Oh, good lord, yeah.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yes. Very
and
impressive.
They're all named. They're all named. He's definitely
Yep.
a plant gay.
Yes. So, with Peter thinking that they're going to follow through with his fake boyfriend plan and Nick just there for the ride, they head to go be with Peter's family. And we do get a little brief thing meeting the family via FaceTime calls a little bit but we get fully introduced to the family when they finally arrive. And it's so nice because everybody is just happy to see everybody. They're super excited to see Peter, and they're very excited and surprised to see Nick.
Oh yeah, because they love Nick. They already know Nick. Mm-hmm. Safe space.
Yes, exactly. But then we are introduced to Peter's mom, Carol, Christmas Carol.
Christmas Carol.
Yes.
Don't you dare.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And Christmas Carol is played by the lovely Kathy Najimy.
Who, if you don't recognize that name, she's Mary in the Hocus Pocus movies.
Yes.
So, you do know her. You may not recognize her name, but there she is.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And she is just a joy. She is hilarious. She's the super loving parent, the one who tries to be in on the know, has done her research on however many letters she thinks are in LGBTQ.
I was reading in my LGBTT book.
Yes. It's so sweet, though.
It is. She was so good.
Mm-hmm. But she's all excited to see them, and then she starts talking about that she has something for Peter. And she's like, I have a date for you. I have somebody that I want you to meet. And Peter's like,
blind date time.
Yeah, blind date. And Peter's like, oh no, I don't think so. And Nick's like, this is a great idea. So Nick immediately cuts off.
Oh yeah, he jumps straight on that. And,
yes.
And Peter's like, oh my God, how dare you betray me?
Yes.
we're in a fake relationship.
Exactly. But which honestly I loved, because sometimes when these romantic comedies have these cringy fake relationships, those can really get too far into the story.
Oh, I'm so glad they did that. There's a premise, and then they hit the point where it's like, let's start the premise, and they threw it right out the window. I was like, oh, thank God. I've already seen the proposal. I don't need to watch this now.
Exactly. So I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm so relieved. I'm like, okay, we're heading into some new territory. This will be interesting. So yes, the mom is like, I set you up on a blind date. And Peter's like, in this small town, how are there any gays? Are you kidding me? And he's like, you can't just set me up with just the first person you meet.
Just because we're gay doesn't mean we're compatible. Good Lord.
Yeah.
And she was like, I know, that's what my book told me.
Yes. Yep. And everybody eventually is like, well, Peter, no, you're going to go on this date. Nick's like, yes, you are. And Peter's like, okay, fine. And of course, this guy is also his mom's spin
trainer,
class instructor.
Yeah. Something like that at the gym.
Yeah. So that's the setup for that. But then we get introduced to the rest of the family. They all come over, and this is where we get to meet everybody, because he has 2 sisters and they're married and they all have kids, and everybody's happy to see each other. But then we're introduced to some fun people in this cast. Now, one of the sisters, I know her because she is in Schitt's Creek.
Yes.
Who's Jocelyn.
Jennifer
yes.
Robertson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jocelyn,
yes.
That's her name. I was trying to think of her name.
Mm-hmm.
But no, and it's so funny because she basically plays the same character.
Yes.
The same true. Facial expressions and everything. And I was just like, it works. It's fine.
Yep. Mm-hmm. But she's so funny. And then another big star in this cast, we get the aunt comes in.
Aunt
fashionably
Sandy.
Late, yes. Oh, Aunt Sandy.
And she's played by Jennifer Coolidge, which is actually really funny because watching this movie, there was 3 times where something happened or I saw something that I've seen on it's a sound on TikTok or it's on viral or something, and I was like, oh, that's where that came from.
That's funny.
Legit, when later on when they're at the rehearsal for the pageant,
yes,
and she's screaming at the kid, she's like, listen, that sound is all over TikTok. At the very end, at the pageant, and she's in her big I don't it was a very Glinda outfit from Wicked, that also I've seen her in that outfit everywhere, but I didn't know what it was from. So it's just like, that's hilarious.
That
Like,
is so
awesome.
funny. That's
It
so funny. I
is.
didn't
It
know. Yeah.
is.
Well, there's so many things her character says, like, which actually is the funny part how they introduced her. Like, she used to be on Broadway, off Broadway. She used to, she was the lead. She was not the lead. Yeah. But she's really big into theater, and so every year she puts on the Christmas pageant, and she always likes to put her unique spin on like the classic Christmas story. So when she reads the script and the kids are practicing at the Mary.
Mary.
Oh my gosh.
She is just iconic in every way.
Yes. But anyway, so all those kids get roped into that. But anyway, so it's really fun, the whole introductory scene where Aunt Sandy comes in, you're with all the family. I think it's a really well done scene because you really get a lot of people's personalities, but also kind of shows the chaos and the joy of family meeting up for a holiday and talking over each other and having random conversations, catching up and everything. It's a really
It's
fun
so like
scene.
fast paced too. Like, they're not
Yes.
trying to take forever to do it, but they're trying to show off the dynamics between all the characters and family members and stuff. And I think they did a wonderful job of that.
Yeah. And so then they all find out that Peter's going on a date. So everybody is freaking out, super happy.
Freaking out.
Yes. They're like, finally, like, oh my gosh, we can't wait. And then you have some of the characters in the background, like the nieces being like,
God, they're such
Yeah.
like modern teenage girls for like the first like half of the movie, and then
Yes.
later they get some time to shine and they get some character development.
mm-hmm.
But no, they're absolutely like typical teenage girls
Yes.
for a while. For a while.
But then the story essentially progresses. Peter does go on this date, and, well, he has to meet his blind date after, like...
After his mom's like gym class.
Yes.
So he's all like dressed up, to some degree, and he goes into the
Yes.
gym. And I remember sitting there, I was watching. He goes in, and then the mom is there, and she's like, "Oh my God, you're here!" And then you can see like over her shoulder, like the guy in question, and of course he's all sweaty and drenched and is like toweling himself off and stuff.
Yes.
And him and Peter look at each other, and like introductions are happening. I'm just like, oh God, he's hot. Like that's, but like not like in a way out there kind of way. Like, of course he would be that hot.
Yes. And so we are introduced to James, who is played by Luke McFarlane, who, if people are familiar with his name or maybe be more familiar with some of his other previous works, he's really actually big in the Hallmark movies. He was also more recently in the movie Bros, which is wild, but nothing like this movie. So
Nope, that's okay.
yes. But anyway, so then they're introduced to each other. Sparks fly a little bit, much to our main character's surprise, and they
and
go
his
out.
mother is just giddy as heck.
Yes. She's like, okay, now go do stuff. Go.
Get out of here.
Yeah. And he's like, Mom. But yeah, so they go, they have a cute date. Because another thing that's kind of funny is that Christmas Carol loves her fake tree. She's tired of taking care of a real tree. The rest of the family is offended by that. So then Peter was like, oh, there's like a tree farm around nearby. Let's go get a tree and bring it back home. And so he does this on his date.
Like, and James is like happy to do that with him. But I was going through this, I'm like, you are forcing a real tree on your mother who just told you like why I was like, if I did this to my mom, she would like light the tree and me on fire. Like like she said no.
Yeah. No, they are so messy. Yeah.
And the rest of the family is like, oh my God, you brought a real tree. Let's get rid of this monstrosity, and we'll just like distract your mom until it's finished and she can't do anything about it. It's like, you're a bunch of jerks.
Yeah. So you get a lot of that silly ridiculousness. There's so many little moments in this movie where you get all these little like quirks and stuff with like the strange holiday traditions they talk about, and just even some of the dialogue. Like, yes, some of it is cheesy, but it's like the good fun cheesy.
You're right. It wasn't too cheesy. It was like, this is within expectations of this kind of movie, and it's kind of cute.
Yeah.
Like, they never hit the gag me, oh God, I'd rather be anywhere else but here vibe, They always like head in that direction and then like turn. And it's like, oh, thank you for that. Appreciate that.
Yes. But this movie, because I think it's set up like they're going to be there for 10 days. So I think before they leave, they say like it's gonna be 10 days. So it's kind of like slowly leading up to Christmas time as well. And so we see the days pass as the countdown to Christmas, because we have our main storyline, which is Peter and James continuously like going out on these dates. And then you see the family's thoughts and feelings about it. And then you see Nick being a little like happy, but also a little sad. And then people being like, well, what about Nick?
You get to see like Nick spend time with his family, like with Peter's family though,
Yes.
and how they love him and everything is just going so good. So the family's like, just why not Nick? He's right here. You do love him. Like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Like boyfriend in a box. Like he's ready to go.
Yes. But that's something that Peter does not see, and he's fine going on these dates, and like, but then he's also conflicted because then he sees, Nick spending time with his family, and he's like, oh, those are so cute. Like, he's getting FOMO. So, and then also we're getting bits and pieces of Aunt Sandy's Christmas pageant extravaganza.
And she's like terrorizing the kids about it.
Yes, when like all the kids are basically having like a breakdown, and basically Peter and Nick have to be involved in it and kind of refocus the performance and the practicing. And Nick, of course, because he's a handy guy, he helps make some really cool sets and everything, gets all that ready. Peter encourages the kids with their lines, unlike Aunt Sandy terrorizing them and basically like wanting to play every single part. That old scene where she's like, if you don't know your lines, basically I will do it for you.
She's like snatching scripts out of hands and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, because another thing too is that, because we mentioned at the beginning that Peter has a job with kind of an annoying, demanding boss. Well, of course, it's right before Christmas, and he just had a very expensive photo shoot in LA. Well, his boss decides that's not what they're looking for. They want something a little more that people can relate to. And so Peter has to put it upon himself to take pictures. And he comes with the idea of using the guys around him, as in his best friend Nick, and it's basically like a shaving cream. Like,
it's they're like the razor company.
Yes,
that's just like shaving cream. Mm-hmm. So like at the beginning you had this huge photo shoot with a bunch of like male models in Santa shorts, but they had like beards made out of the shaving cream. Mm-hmm. It was like this big like fancy thing, but now they're like, no, make it simple. Mm-hmm. So he just uses these two other guys as his like little models, and they're just like, Nick is out chopping wood, and then James, they're just like out on the town at night, taking pictures like with these like shaving cream beards.
Yes.
It was kind of cute. I'll admit it was. I enjoyed that part. I was like, oh, look at that.
Yeah, it's cute and funny. And there's also these moments too where he has the guys do these like photos to like, where he's like, I had this really cool idea to breathe out to add some, haze to the photo. And you see this moment where Peter like almost feels like he has feelings for Nick, and then it quickly passes. And then he has James do the same thing, but he doesn't have that same feeling. And that's where Peter kind of like thinks on that, but he doesn't think anymore about it.
He doesn't want to like focus on that. Because like he wants this relationship with James to pan out, but he knows that he also likes Nick. But it's like, but what if something bad happens and we've lost our best friends? Like,
for real. Yeah.
I think we can all relate to that to some degree.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But in something about James's character, which I was always kind of waiting for that shoe to drop, was that like James notices how Peter feels about Nick several times, and he never gets upset about it or like confrontational. In fact, he asks several times, like, are you sure? Like I'm having a good time with you, and you're obviously having a good time with me, but are you sure that you wouldn't be having a better time if I were Nick? And he never like says it in a like accusatory way. Mm-hmm. And like all throughout the movie, and even to the end, like I was like, that's just so like nice of a character to be written, especially a gay character.
Well, and especially like this also being a romantic comedy and like having these like multiple love interests and stuff, and like a love triangle in a sense, I was always waiting for there to be something sketchy about his character, but there ended up being nothing bad about it. Yeah.
Which is also lovely because like Peter's also dealt with terrible people. Yeah. So he's found a nice and normal person, but it just wasn't meant to be. So
No. And that's just something more with like James's character specifically, basically confronting that situation and saying, Peter, like, you know, like, I enjoy being with you. I think you enjoy being with me too, but we're not a match. I know it's hard to say, but we have to say it out loud. And that I think you need to deal with your feelings and go after Nick.
So then you have like this lovely part, and then in the background, the whole movie, you have Peter's trifling family, like trying to like set things up so Peter and Nick also get to spend some time together. Like he comes back from the date the date where they do the shaving cream beard. Peter comes back home and his 2 teenage nieces are sleeping in his bed.
Yes, that's right.
Which forces him to go sleep in the same bed as Nick. And like he leaves and they're all like high five. I was like, you trifling so-and-so's, like they know exactly what they're doing.
Yes,
which is the whole point. Like that's their whole like story beat in the whole movie, is they're trying to like force the 2 of them together. So
yeah, they're also hilarious, but yes, they're totally like just those teenagers. There's also a fun cutesy dance scene with them and Peter.
Which is so funny because I haven't heard that song in a million years. As like one of Britney Spears' old Christmas songs. I was like, he said that, and then they said something. They're like, oh, we got to get it set up. And then the music started, and I was like, wow, okay, I'm old. All right.
Yeah. What a throwback, for real. But yes, essentially, then towards the end, we do get Peter and Nick coming together and admitting their feelings, but also admitting that they are scared to try because they have that long established friendship, which is totally understandable to be worried about what could go wrong with that. But they decided to give it a try. And because another thing that was talked about was that Peter had also been having conflicting feelings about maybe he wanted to move back home, which of course his mother had constantly said throughout the movie, like, I wish you lived closer, which, you know, I think there's some people's parents who are like, I want you to live closer. And it's like, yeah, but, you know, job wise, or, you know, not quite what's there, but
he wants to like, he's like, I can move back and like open a plant shop since I actually like that job and I hate my job.
Yeah.
And then like, and from that, so they talk about, like Nick and Peter talk a lot about Peter moving back home. And like, you want to like knock their 2 heads together because when they talk about it, Peter always says me like leaving you to come back home and never insinuates that Nick could come with him. You know, and Nick didn't want to like insert himself in that situation. But can we talk about like the end there?
Yes.
Like Nick is like, well, I'm gonna go back home. You've made your decision. But then on the way to which I was like, oh god, they're doing the airport thing, like, and Nick's like, oh god, I figured it out, or Peter's like, I figured it out, I have to stop him before he gets on the plane. I was like, really, we're gonna do that? No, nope. They stopped.
Yes.
So like on his way out, Nick found like a for sale sign.
He had gotten one last job option. Yeah, opportunity.
To like go like paint this guy's walls in the shop that he was selling. There we go. And Nick's like, I'm gonna buy it and give it to Peter so that he has a place to start and like restart his life. And so Peter finds him there, and they have that moment where they come together and they're like whining at each other. Well, you didn't say, and you didn't say, and but then like they kiss, and it's like, yay! Like they're not dumb anymore. Hooray!
Yes, exactly. They figured it out finally.
So they're both moving back. Peter has a plant shop, and Nick is just going to keep doing what he does. Oh. And.
Well, he'll have Emmett with him, and 2 of his biggest fans, which were 2 Peter's nephews, were like, we love this book and everything. Like, are you going to write a sequel? Well, he did come up with a sequel for his book, inspired by their lives.
Oh, yes. Nick and Peter and Emmett.
It's so cute.
It is. And so the movie ends with them like announcing that they're together and that they're moving back home. And everybody screams, and Jennifer Coolidge isn't there in the final shot because I don't know why. But you know. Well,
she's in that like credit scene though.
Oh, oh yeah. Right. Well, I think it's so funny. Like they're in the bar, like before they're in the bar, and Peter and James are having that like the talk about like, I think you need to be with Nick because obviously you want to be with Nick. And then Jennifer Coolidge's character comes over and she's like, I think you're really handsome.
Yeah. And I think you and I, and then
And Peter's mom comes up and grabs her. She's like, no, honey. Wrong team.
Wrong team.
Nope.
Yeah. And then she is just devastated. She's like, Or in the first she's kind of like, are you sure it will work? Are you sure? Yeah.
Like, people are into all sorts of things these days.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. Oh gosh. For real. But then, yes, we see her at the end because we're like, oh, I guess Aunt Sandy's going to be alone. Well, maybe not. Because we're introduced to this character at the bar who is like also like is a snowplower, and
he's like the snowplower and an actuary and
he has like a million
psychic.
Jobs. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
And but all of this stuff he does all throughout the year. Because once he, like, throughout the entire year, he writes a new Christmas song that he sings at the bar on Christmas Eve.
Yes.
I love the lore.
Yes, I think it's so funny. And then we get this really funny song at the end, which is also, I think the song is called Single All the Way. And it's just funny. And then we get, yes, Aunt Sandy all being like, hello, who are you? And dancing and up on stage with him. And he's like, okay. But it's funny because that guy is actually the real life husband of Kathy Najimy. And he wrote that song at the end.
Which is just crazy. Like, that's so fun.
Yes. But essentially, that is Single All the Way in a nutshell. It's a very, nice and short movie, about an hour and a half long. Like we said, it's on Netflix. I highly recommend it because I say it's part of our annual Christmas movie watching time, but
it's not quite a Hallmark movie. Like, it has some feels like a Hallmark movie, but it doesn't quite go all the way into that territory, but it's also really good representation. Very positive representation, and the cast is so good, like the acting is so good. It's just a good Christmas movie.
Yes. It is. And it's like, especially it's what I want. I want that feel good, just fun, funny Christmas movie. Okay. Well, listeners, we hope you'll give this movie a chance. And if you've already seen it, let us know what you think of it. And be sure you follow or subscribe wherever you listen to our podcast so you don't miss out on future episodes. We have one more episode left for the year. That will be our year-end review episode, our big, beefy episode about...
I feel like we have a crazy year to review.
Yes.
Like, so if listeners, if you have some categories you'd like to hear us talk about, let us know. Like, the best this, the best that. But, however you want to word that's kind of what we're doing.
Yep, and we'll be sharing, just the best that we've experienced this year. It might not quite be everything that came out this year, so we might have some older things on there, but we'll also cover some new things as well. And, maybe it's a little tease because if you haven't checked out some of our earlier episodes this year, whether we've covered certain movies or video games, we've definitely talked about some ones that were really great this year. So I'm sure those will be a part of that final episode as well.
Oh, yeah.
But yes, with that, I think that will do it for this week's episode. And like we said, be sure to check out our final episode of the year.
See ya.